So today I am interviewing and talking with the famous, or some may say infamous, Cindy Cooke. And we're just gonna have a quick visit about Scotties and how you got started in this and where this adventure and path has taken you. So,
Well,
however you would like to begin.
all right. I got started with family moved across the street from my grandmother, and they had a Scottie puppy.
Mm-hmm.
And they were not very, she didn't think, very responsible owners. They would just let him run loose out across the street, and he would come over and get in her garbage. And every day she'd pick him up and take him home. Finally, he said one day, "Well, Mrs. Hall, if you like the dog so much, you can keep him," and slammed the door in her face. And she knocked again on the door and said, "Well, does he have papers?" And then she called me and said, "Your mom told me you were getting it. You want to get a dog." And I said, "Yes, I've put a deposit down." "Well, you remember the little Scottie puppy from across the street? Your grandfather's going to fly him down tomorrow." And I'm like, "A Scottie? I have a deposit on a miniature schnauzer," which of course is what I had mostly grown up with.
Mm-hmm.
But I picked him up and fell in love, and that was that. I'm pretty sure he had Scotty cramp, and he was homely. But
Mm-hmm.
I decided then I wanted a better one, so I bought a dog from a local ad in the newspaper in San Antonio, Texas. Champion sired, which he was.
Mm-hmm.
And the lady was what people would just say a backyard breeder now, but she didn't know any better. And she was thrilled to have somebody who I had kind of joined the terrier club to learn to trim my puppy, and
Mm-hmm.
who might show her dog. And I did show him. He
Yeah.
didn't win anything, but then I decided after a while that I probably better get a better dog if I wanted something I could show and finish.
Right. Mm-hmm.
So Louise Ellsworth, who used to edit the Bagpiper when it was a little tiny publication printed on a mimeograph machine, I think. And she said, "Well, you ought to call Buffy Stamm. She's got nice dogs." So I called her, and she's saying, "Well, I don't really have any. I wanted a black female."
Mm-hmm.
No, I wanted Brindle. And of
Oh.
course, we had mostly black females.
Mm-hmm.
And she said, "Well, I don't really." I said, "That's okay." At that time, the price for a show puppy was $1,000. And I put money by every month to have that much. So,
Yeah.
all right, that's enough.
They have to have the last word. Every
Yeah.
word.
So she called me, I want to say, must have been February of 78, and said she had a bitch, brindle bitch. And was I interested? So I flew up there. I'd already, by then, I'd sent her $1,000. And she was a happy venture daughter out of a Gosmore Gilson Highland King daughter.
Mm-hmm.
Had a great pedigree. Turned out she was a VWD carrier, which I discovered toward the end of her life. But
Mm-hmm. Oh, towards the end of her life. That's good.
yeah,
She managed
well,
to live. Mm-hmm.
Happy Venture was clear.
Mm-hmm. Oh, okay.
But the mother was a carrier, and she was a carrier, and never got pregnant.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. But anyway, I finished her.
Mm-hmm.
I was just happy as a clam. But Buffy, I had been writing her chatty little letters every time I sent the check. And for reasons known but to God, she decided she was going to ask me if I'd be interested in working with her.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, no, I'm not turning that down, because I was in San Antonio, and the closest people to me were Rick and Debbie Fowler.
Mm-hmm.
So they were up in Dallas area. So that was it. We started working together. I was very fortunate. I had a great mentor.
Yes, extremely. So from there, where did the adventure begin?
Well, we kind of had to meet at specialty shows
Mhm,
because I was still on active duty and I
mhm.
was transferred around. Um, and I finally got an assignment to uh, Wright-Patterson Air Force Base, which was in Dayton,
Mhm.
so I could uh, visit with her a little more often, and she could hone my trimming skills, which I have no natural grooming talent. I tell my friends I want my tombstone to say she finally got the eyebrows right. I will have to live another 30 years, I think, for that to happen. But um, I just did what she told me and worked really hard. And when I got out of the Air Force, then I moved up here to Kalamazoo to work with her, and
Mhm,
that was how it started. She made sure I always had a good dog,
mhm,
so I always had somebody to show.
mhm.
And well, this, it's like dancing with different partners
For
every day,
sure.
you know. So it helped me move along faster. If I had just been someone who bought that bitch from her,
Mhm.
I would have spent a couple of years trying to get her pregnant
Right.
and then waiting to buy another bitch. Uh,
Yeah.
I don't know if I'd ever been that lucky. So
But as you built that relationship with her, and as you built the relationship with each dog, I believe, right, like most of us, you learned as you went, right?
yeah,
And you
yeah.
became better and improved, and your eye became better.
Yeah, definitely. One of the things I did while I was waiting for Fanny, that was my bitch, first bitch from Buffy. I The New York Times review of books always had ads from guys who would search bookstores in New York and
Hmm.
just send them the names. So I sent them the list of every old Scotty book, this guy, and I said, find these and I will buy them.
Hmm.
So I read everything.
Hmm.
So, that's what I learned in law school. You do your homework, do your research. And that helped me a lot to see, the first thing, somebody says, oh, that dog's got really good shoulders. I couldn't see it, you
Hmm.
know.
Right.
So I learned so much from reading those old books.
Hmm.
And then when Buffy would evaluate a litter, if it was somewhere I could drive to, I'd meet her and she'd let me evaluate him first, and then she'd evaluate him and explain maybe why she picked a different dog.
Hmm.
And Stam, rough me, tough, rowdy. Um, she picked him, and I thought, why? He's got such big ears. And he did have his ears were a little generous. There's no doubt about it. But the rest of him, once she showed me, I could see,
Right.
what a good little dog he was. And I think it was Annie Clark put him winner's dog in Atlanta and best of winners. Like I said, see,
Right.
and
But all of that creates our eye, right? I mean, and
yeah,
I think that I recently spoke to a judge who talked about how they learned Scotties, and the fact that Rick said, I have a whole litter of Scotties at the kennel to evaluate. Come over, and I want you to tell me which one and put them first to fourth, and tell me
yeah,
where you put them. And you learn by touching and your hands and all of that, right?
exactly, exactly. And that's one of the things that really concerns me now. Um, there's an awful lot of, well, as our numbers are dropping,
Mm-hmm.
uh, competition. One of the things I learned when I moved up here to Michigan
Mm-hmm.
was how hard it was to be successful in Scotties in
Right.
Michigan.
Mm-hmm.
People from Ohio didn't even come to our specialty.
Mm-hmm.
It was just, there were so many good dogs and so many good breeders. And now that our numbers are down so much, and I'm not saying they're not good dogs, but what I'm saying is you have to see some really great dogs.
Mm-hmm.
And, I mean, the bitch I got from Buffy was wonderful. If
Mm-hmm.
I had her today, I could win groups with her, I could win
Mm-hmm.
specialties with her. But still, I had to see really great Scotties to train my eye so that pretty good dog, I could see the difference between a pretty good dog and a really good dog.
Right.
And that's the hardest skill to learn. And there's parts of the country where people just don't get the chance to see.
Mm-hmm.
And it's going to be harder for them. And it's like, they're, and I'm not throwing any stones at Canada. There have been some great dogs bred there. But because it's such a big country and there's not that many of them widespread, it used to be a little bit of a easy trip to run across the border and win some specialties or some groups or even best.
Right. Mm-hmm.
And it's not a knock on anybody's dogs. It's just we're not breeding enough outstanding dogs. And I don't know how that's going to get changed right now.
That leads me to another question, right? I mean, systemically, or what do you see are some of the concerns, not just in Scotties, right? But as a sport as a whole, you identified something there that we just don't have the numbers that we used to have.
Exactly. The other thing is, we are going through a really rapid period of inflation. I bought 4.5 bags of Purina Pro Plan. What made me think about this? Looking on Facebook, somebody was saying, it was a group for show people. What do you feed your dogs? And nobody was feeding Pro Plan.
Right.
I thought, when I started feeding Pro Plan, everybody was feeding Pro Plan. What's going on? Expense. I bought 4 bags. It was $400.
Right.
Or no, five bags. It was $400. Yeah, I can understand where it's going to be a situation where middle class people like me and retirees particularly, at some point we're going to be pushed out.
Tremendously.
Yeah. So, and that's a real problem, because when it was just rich people in small parts of the country, even rich people didn't always have the most fabulous dogs, but they had good winners because they were with top handlers and they were trimmed beautifully and trained beautifully, and people could afford to travel them all over the country.
Right. When it was more of a elitist affluent sport.
Right. And also at that time, because England was so poor post World War II, we were able to skim the cream off of their good dogs. And they paid a price for that. So, it remains to be seen what will happen. But we really desperately need good education for new breeders.
Definitely.
And that brings me to our next problem, which is people who don't feel like our standard is correct. I thought about leaving my house to the parent club with a proviso that they could have the money, but they couldn't change the standard. I don't think you can do that, but it's something that worries me, because I found a picture of George Ward going best in show at Westminster. I want to say it was 1962 with the Westie. And that Westie could not win a class today. It is so changed.
Right.
So,
and Karen's too.
Yes. Yes.
Totally.
And as Westies have changed, they have also become more upright in the shoulders. There's people who see that in Westies, but they're all geezers like me. Nobody's interested in what they have to say that much. So Westies are, I don't know if they could ever go back. I don't know how many dogs they have correctly made compared to what they had in 62.
There's somebody who's been asking too, because as we change structure, as we modify the breed, as we gear towards what's winning in the breed, in the ring, but then how is that affecting us in the whelping dogs? Right.
Well, that's a good question. Buffy and I had a hard rule. If a bitch needed a section because a puppy got stuck or it was big or it was, we'd give her one more try.
Right.
But if the bitch just laid down and said, I don't feel like doing this,
Mhm.
we get the section and raise the litter and
Mhm.
spade the bitch and place her. And I do think there was a study published some time ago where they did pelvimetry on Scotties, two other breeds.
Mhm.
I can't remember what they were, but Scotties were one of them. And the shape of the pelvis was key.
Right. Mhm.
And I think that's a feature that, you know, you can only see with x-rays, but it's something to think about. And I do think in Europe, for example, their sections, our sections are starting to approach the price of European C-sections, but they are so many of them now in, and I'm not necessarily including England, but a lot of the other countries, they're just sectioning them.
Mhm.
And even a lot of American breeders don't want to wait,
Mhm.
and they worry that they might lose a puppy or two. And that's true, you might. But anything you don't
Mhm.
test for and
Right.
cut, you can lose very easily. So I do think that's a, I think the shorter they make, the more compact they make them. And you get an awful lot of shorter heads with that. Not always,
Mhm.
but it's enough that it concerns me. But I have said that to, you know, several people that I think of kind of moving in that direction. And they say, well, I like it.
Mhm.
I
Yeah, well,
like
it's
it.
pleasing to the eye, right? You see all the
Yeah,
statues, people are pushed into that direction because it looks nice and fancy, and it's the, but it
is
doesn't
it functional?
correct. Right, exactly.
And other thing that goes along with that is size. Now, don't get me wrong.
Mhm.
We've had some big dogs in our day at
Right.
Anston.
Mhm.
Um, but it is important.
Mhm.
You know, I have somebody say, well, I think my bitch is small. Well, what does she weigh? 20 pounds. That's not small.
No. Mm.
I've got a little bitch I'm getting ready to show, and she weighs 20 and a half pounds. And she's probably a little bit, not quite 10 inches. She's about 10 inches.
Mhm.
She looks like a midget in the ring.
Yeah.
And that'll handicap her, I think, in some cases. And, you know, I can live with that. But it's important that at some point we all have got to say, okay, I've got a dog now that I've used at stud, and I will probably use him again. He's a biggish boy. He's not as
Mm.
big as some we've had. I had a dog that weighed 26 pounds, Flashpoint. He's a gorgeous dog.
Mhm.
Um, but he couldn't have gone in a 9-inch hole without a
Right.
backhoe.
Yeah. Doing some of his own work, digging through
Yeah,
it.
yeah. So it's just important that people keep their eyes on the standard. And really, the committee that we had some of the best breeders in the country, and they were all of an age that they'd seen dogs through the decades. So I'm always a little hesitant when I see somebody that's been doing this for. A lady the other day was saying, "Well, my line," and I'm thinking, your line maybe had 3-4 litters.
Right. Yeah. It's a good start.
Yeah, yeah,
Mhm. Mhm. Well, and I think that's, we have to watch and be careful because one of the things I see is that there's too many people are being pulled in too many directions, right? We don't just have the dogs anymore. And one of the things that we're doing, so many people used to have their job, come home from work,
2 dogs.
be the one who was the main breadwinner in the home or something, and then just work on their dogs or
Yeah,
go, and it was a family outing or an outing for the weekend, and you'd go do that and you'd sit around and watch the other breeds and you'd have maybe bring a potluck, right? And it was an event for your weekend, and then you'd go home and your weekend was done and you go back to work.
yeah.
Right? It's the show and go, the not going over other dogs to learn what that dog has versus what your dog has, the mingle.
It's even worse. It's people that write checks that don't even go to the shows,
Mhm.
just get a bill once a month.
Mhm.
And that's a little scary to me. I
Mhm.
mean, I think when when Scotties first came to this country, wealthy people had them. They also had horses, and many of them had cattle or sheep. They had some knowledge of animal husbandry and what traits are heritable and what traits you can give a little on. But now, like I said, everybody is suburban. And people, when I was growing up, we did what our parents wanted to do on the weekend. And they, they included, we went swimming or we went on picnics or we went on. But now parents are so concerned, the minute their kids start school, they're planning for them to get into college.
Oh, don't I know?
Yeah, to study for jobs that probably won't be there when those kids graduate.
Right.
But the idea of learning about the basics and understanding, I could not for the life of me, see how shoulders affected Scotty movement when it started. Now I can see him sitting across the room, where the head's carried, everything,
Definitely. Well, and how all it connects and how that structure and the rear structure emphasize, and impact the movement, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And, it's funny. I've got two males in a litter. And one is Mr. Body. He's really low. He's got big, chunky legs and everything. His head's a little short. And I got another one, this gorgeous long head. Not quite as low, not quite as much body. So I'm running them on. I've got to make a decision soon at some point. But people do not, when they're 12 weeks old, max, they're out the door. And, so you don't get to see how they can change as they mature.
Right. Well, and I think we've had some trouble too, where the puppy buyer says, I want it younger. I want it younger. Well, I'm sorry, it's not going anywhere for a while.
Yeah. Well, lady was looking for a female the other day, and I said, there's a lady here in Michigan. Where are you? Well, she's in Pennsylvania. I said, well, would you be willing to drive to get your puppy? I don't ship. And 3 breeders popped in and said, oh, we ship. We've got this. We've got that. And especially now, I wouldn't ship. Good Lord. Used to be when you got a flight, you might leave a little bit late for some reason, but mostly you left on time, you arrived on time. Now you may sit in an airport for a couple of days.
Unfortunately, yes, business travel and all that. It's just
yeah, it's scary.
Yeah, definitely. So getting on to a couple of things, what would you say your most memorable moment in the whelping box is? Which is, it seems like a silly question, I know, but I mean, something that was produced in there, a silly, situation you had, one of those maybe memorable.
I'm normally so tired when they come in the middle of the night.
Right.
To think if I can remember. Exactly. I just am always so grateful when they're alive and pop out normally, and I don't have to call the vet for a night in his office.
You're so fortunate you have a vet that you can still call for a night in his office.
Yes. I was so lucky. He worked when he first started, he worked for the vet who owned the Kalamazoo Emergency Clinic. And I had the worst time in that emergency clinic. I brought a bitch in, good at, because one of the things, I had a reproductive specialist up in Lansing. And I said, now look, I can't deal with a vet who gets jealous and upset, if I take my dog to another vet. He said, no, I'm perfectly happy to let Will do that. He said, that's not my area of specialty, but I'm going to learn. So I was very lucky, and he's a terrific vet. He did take a 1-week vacation a couple of weeks ago without a locum in his office, and he couldn't get one.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
That's a scary thing too, because what's going to happen as the numbers drop, doodle people are not going to be able to maintain their numbers forever.
Right.
But anyway, I said, you just can't be gone. You are not supposed to retire till I'm dead. And he said, okay, that's a good deal. I'll take that. I said, well, my dad just passed away last week, so you've been warned.
Sorry to
But
hear.
it is important to get a good vet and one who understands why people like us are needed.
For sure.
Because many veterinarians, in fact, my repro vet told me, he said his best man won't even see a breeder like you. He doesn't want somebody that might differ with him on how something should be done.
Huh.
And that's kind of scary.
Yeah, I'm definitely, I'm like you. I want a vet who listens, right?
Yeah.
We had this conversation the other day. I said, how do you tell a good vet? Well, one that comes and it comes in and sits on the floor with my dog.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah. He's wonderful. I had a dog here who was kind of unhappy with having his head examined, and I took the rest of the dogs in for their annual kennel. And I said, would you mind just petting this dog around his face and talking to him a little bit? Not a problem. I knew the dog wasn't going to bite him, but you can't just ask anybody to do that if a dog is, going to pull away or be a little.
And they can definitely sense the situation.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, that's good. Very lucky. It's getting few and far between, especially with anything within reasonable rate around where I am, to have an emergency C-section.
Well, and even my current vet, um, he has costs and things. I understand he has to raise his prices to keep up, but it's going to be hard times for us for a while until they.
Yeah, definitely. What about Montgomery? What are your thoughts, memorable thoughts at Monty?
Well, first the
Of
year I
course,
was free
something
to
else.
wave
Yeah.
from the classes, that will I expect will still be my when I go to my reward.
And
That
those who are not familiar, will you remind us of the dog and the story a little bit?
yeah, she was bred by a lady in Kalamazoo, and Buffy was smart about placing good bitches, not necessarily that were going to be great show dogs, but well-bred bitches with no serious faults, with people who'd be interested in having some litters. And so she was bred by a lady here in town who'd bred with Buffy for decades. And when we evaluated the litter, I said, that's my Montgomery puppy. Who are you going to show? He just kind of laughed. But she was so much fun. She finished with 3 specialty wins, best of winners twice. Interesting, she didn't win sweepstakes either day, but best of winners. And then she won the sweeps at Montgomery when she was 6 months old. So just a couple of weeks over 6 months old, under Cindy Cooke. And Jim Reynolds was doing sweeps, and Judy Hughes had a very pretty puppy bitch. And I knew Jim was going to like that bitch, but I just thought, one thing about Heatwave was she just free stacked herself. She would stand with her tail bang up and look at me, go around. She just did everything right. And when Jim wrote his comments about Montgomery that year, he said when he judged, he didn't mention Judy's name, but when he judged Judy's class, he said he was sure he'd found his winner's bitch. And then Heatwave was in the open class. And he went back and forth, but he said every time he looked at her, he said she'd be standing there just looking up at me or looking at him. And he said he just couldn't deny her, gave her winner's bitch. And it was a long day. I think there was like 180 something Scotties entered that day, which I hope we'll see again some year.
Right.
But And all the top winning Scotties that year were in the ring. And he said, every time I look at her, the language of the standard came into my mind. And I remembered that.
Mm-hmm.
I bred her 3 times to 3 different stud dogs.
Mm-hmm.
And I only had one pretty puppy in the first litter. And I sold it to a dear friend of mine because I thought, oh, there'll be plenty more. And there weren't.
Mm.
She just wasn't a great, she was a great mom. She loved them and oh, she raised them, no problems. But she was, I've probably had some dogs who were slightly better than she was in some ways.
Mm-hmm.
Their ears could have been a little bit smaller, but I
Mm-hmm.
she was that dog for me.
Yeah, the heart dog, right? Yeah, definitely. Such a great way to reminisce.
Yeah, I've had other good dogs and dogs that did well at Montgomery. Wild West was winner's dog there the year that Sadie was best of breed, and I think he went best of winners and best of opposite too. But nothing like her, you know.
Mm-hmm. They're
And
those ones that just have that sparkle, right?
yeah, yeah. But I do like them to free stack. I will say that. As my knees have aged,
Mm-hmm.
I like not having to get down with them.
Yes. Especially the ones that look at you as though they, when they're free stacking, as to say,
Yeah,
this is all you need right here. Mm-hmm.
yeah.
I am it. Yeah. Yeah. Any other memories or anything you wish to share? I mean, you talk about getting started with Buffy and Louise. Any other individuals that you think have impacted you along the way?
We're talking about almost, well, over 50 years now.
Yes, I know. That's what I'm saying. There has to be others, rivals or others, right? I strongly am one who believes that my rivals make me just as good as my.
I was just going to say that. Living in Michigan,
Mm-hmm.
you know, we had Sand Greg, we had Terry Wall,
Right.
you know, and we had George Ward, whatever George was showing that year.
Right.
And yeah, yeah, I I beat George once at Detroit Kennel Club, uh, and that was it for me, you know. Hot damn, that's all.
Right. Yeah.
But George, George wouldn't share every little thing he did with you, but if you were friendly and helpful and hung around long enough, every once in a while he'd leave a little tip or make a little suggestion about something you could do that made your dog look better.
Mm-hmm.
But he was a great one. But we have grooming has improved significantly since I came in. My first champion finished with a group 2, but I was stationed down in Florida then, so the competition was tough, but it wasn't like it was up in this area.
Yeah.
But I tried to learn something from everybody who was a better groomer than me, and that was back in those days. That was plenty, just because I just don't have a knack for it. You know, I can see where it needs to be fixed, but I'm not always sure what I need to do to fix it.
Mm-hmm. But I think people like George Ward's, the great ones, that when they actually see somebody working hard or see a dog they like, they're going to throw you that tidbit, right? They're not going to give you everything, which you don't expect, but just for them simply to notice is also a nice tip of the hat.
Funny story, Buffy was showing a bitch named Cheyenne Autumn, and she was gorgeous. She had a very difficult coat to work. It was hard enough, but it wasn't like Heat Wave's coat. I could bathe her coat and show her in a week.
Yeah, nice.
shiny and hard. But Cheyenne Autumn, she had this spectacular head, beautiful ears, very showy bitch.
Mhm.
And she won a group on Saturday. And George was not happy about that. And he took in a class bitch the next day, same judge that had given Shawnee the group.
Mhm.
And that judge put George's bitch over her for the breed on Sunday.
Oh, lovely. Mhm.
One of the few times I ever saw Buffy lose her temper. And boy, was she mad.
Yeah.
George, you know, that was not a nice thing to do. You know, you should, you know. And she was right, of course. He just did it to kind of put us in our place.
Right.
But I admired George in the sense that while he was not always a people person, hardly ever really, but
Mhm.
he really, the dogs got the best of everything.
Right. Right. Yeah. Uh, a gentleman true and through, right? And always
Yep.
took care of his animals. Mhm.
Yes. Yes.
Some of those lessons are such good lessons that are lost today, right? Just the idea of animal husbandry.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah. It's really kind of scary. We had tried to think a handler who lost some dogs due to heat
Oh,
at a
yes.
show one time, and the club didn't want to really take action.
Mm-hmm.
Well, he did his best, and no, no, we had shows sometimes where we'd set them on damp, wet mats in their crate, so there wasn't any chance of them having heat stroke.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, with that humidity and everything.
Yeah, and of course now there's parts of the country where handlers are having to take extra dogs to build their own majors.
Oh, yes. Mm-hmm.
And that's, I mean, it only takes 4 dogs or bitches in Michigan now to make a major.
Yeah.
It
Out here
used
in
to take,
California, it's only 5.
yeah,
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I think that's the other thing. I don't have the statistics in front of me, but there have been a handful of specialties this year that haven't had majors, or at
majors,
least there might be majors in bitches, but not dogs, or dogs and not bitches, right?
right? Well, at the rotating in Ocala, there were only 4 class dogs.
Mm. Right.
And, you know, when your competition is so limited, it's easy to start, seeing your pretty good dog as a great dog
Mm-hmm.
after if you're not careful. It's human nature, we all love our dogs, and we want to see their virtues and not their failings. But it's important, if you're not really ruthless. I had a pretty little bitch recently, and I finally placed her in pet home. She was pretty, she was showy. I think I could have finished her, but I thought, her top line's just dreadful, and I'll be breeding that out of her
Mm-hmm.
for God knows how many generations. I don't want to do it.
I think you had a good video a while back now. It was probably maybe over a year, right? Time flies these days. But you really mentioned, once you get that dog all groomed up at home, make sure you have a neighbor, a friend, a spouse, somebody to walk the dog for you, right?
Yeah, it
Is
was George.
Yeah,
George was the one who told me that.
right.
Yeah, it
Such
looks great on the table. Walk it. See what you think.
right.
So he moved the dog for me, and I'm like, holy cow.
Yep.
You have got to have someone who can walk them for you. And when people say, my husband's terrible, what about your neighbor? I mean,
Right.
for years, Buffy and Nancy Donovan, Nancy lived next door, and she showed Bernese Mountain Dogs and Pekingese.
Oh yeah.
And so she'd come over and move the dogs for us, so we could both watch and see.
Right. Well, and even if that spouse is not so great at moving the dogs, just simply walking them gets them doing, right? Like I love to watch puppies just be puppies and get a true sense of how they are out there on the grass or something.
Absolutely. Absolutely. The other thing I look for in a puppy is, are they looking for my face? I know that sounds weird, but my best show dogs have watched my face for clues. And that's the only way I know. And I've got this little bitch I've got now that I'm ready to start showing. She will sit up in her pen outside so she can look through the window to see if I'm looking.
Right. I love that. I
Yeah.
think it was Jimmy Moses who was obviously, he was speaking in general, not just
Yeah.
terriers or something, but in general. And we were having a conversation and he said, sometimes it's easier to live with a dog that's not so sharp. But when you have that dog that challenges you in the house, they're oftentimes that better show dog, right?
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And people who judge other groups are often have a hard time understanding Scotties. I mean, you put them up on the table and they touch them and Scotty wants to move. I remember Bill the Villeneuve, I had a dog he really liked, and he just grabbed him and boom, now you stand still. Dog looks up at him like, oh, he knows, you know.
Right. He's a Scotty guy.
Yeah. Their independence has to be regarded by judges and appreciated to some extent.
They can definitely sense. We were under a judge recently that seems to have his hands on the dog for too long, right?
Yeah.
Get in and get out.
Yeah. And it's important. And also when they're looking at their teeth, I really wish they'd save that for last and let the owner show the teeth. But I can't convince many judges to do that. But it's just like there's limits to how much intrusion from a stranger they're going to tolerate.
Definitely. And they remember.
Yeah.
Breed never forgets, right?
No.
Never forgets. Having said all that, as somebody new coming into the breed or having been in it for just, a little bit, right? What are you, and they bring their first show dog to the show, they've gotten it groomed the best they can. What do you say to this person when they're being evaluated? Maybe they do well or they don't do well, either way in the show ring, but they need to better understand their dog versus the other dogs, their dog versus the standard.
Years ago, I mean, Buffy was always good. She'd say, would you like me to touch up your dog and show you some grooming tricks that might help you be more successful? Years ago, Joanne Kennelly and I were at a show. I want to say it was in Chicago area. And this lady was there with a very decent little brindle bitch. She had a front, a good rear, top line was level, but she was kind of a hair bag. And there was a handler there with a Wheaton who was very narrow fronted, upright shoulders, but very showy and trimmed to perfection. And she got beat by that dog the first day. And Joanne and I said, would you like us to show you where you need to take hair off? So both of us took turns trimming, and we trimmed on that dog for a couple of hours. And she was so thrilled. And the next day, Norman, what was his name? This is awful. I can't hardly keep track of anybody's names anymore. And Norman Pat. Norman put her dog up. And I thought she was going to faint dead away. But we showed her the kind of grooming tools we used. We showed her where the hair needed to be shorter and where it needed to be longer and how to, roll the coat sort of thing. So yeah, people need to step in and help. I don't so much. I mean, I don't go as often as I used to, but it is important because one of the things that's really hard about show and Scotties is learning to trim. And I'm sure it's true with other terriers, but Scotties, it's not an easy thing to learn, and you can't be successful without it. And today it is probably the worst it's ever been because so many dogs are professionally handled now by really excellent groomers. And it's and because our judge's education, I think, doesn't emphasize that it is not a grooming contest. I mean, you can judge the dogs. I put up a dog in a sweepstakes at a show out west, and I put up a little kind of hairy dog. And I said to the owner, she said, "Oh yeah, I want to get a picture." And this is somebody who knew better. And I said, "I'll take a picture, but I hope you won't publish it anywhere because your dog is not trimmed properly. And I know you know better. It's just, she's a nice little bitch. And I liked her better than the dogs who were trimmed better." And she said, "Oh, well, I just got a new horse." I said, "I don't care." You know, if you respect your dog, do the best you can. And this isn't your best. And I saw her a year or so later, and she was winner's bitch at some specialty, trimmed properly. And she said, "How'd she look today?" And I said, "Well, I'd have a picture with her today that you could publish." And we just laughed about it. But it is important to learn grooming.
It is, right? And as you said, that's one of the hardest things to learn, but it's, if you want to challenge, if you keep pushing, perseverance, all that stuff, right? And just because you lose today doesn't mean you'll lose tomorrow,
Exactly. Exactly.
I think, I mean, it might have been for some other reasons, but Marippy always talked about that, right? When she would lose with the dog that she definitely knew should have won, she would go back and she's like, "Let's look at this. How can we fix this? How can we make it, modify it? What is going on here?"
Yeah.
She trimmed it, made some more changes, enhance the dog's highlights, minimize the lowlights, right?
Yeah, exactly. It's important to know what your dog's strengths are and where their failings are.
Right. And I definitely think, like we've talked about several times throughout today, right? Going back, working with those mentors, letting other people help you understand that.
Yeah. And understand that at a show, people are busy. Sometimes they're tired. It doesn't matter as much that they're nice to you. People want to be told all the time, "Oh, your dog is fabulous. You were screwed today. You should have won." Sometimes the person that's going to be the most helpful to you is the most honest.
Right.
And they'll tell you if you ask them.
Right.
And maybe if you're lucky, they'll show you a way to kind of hide whatever it is that is your dog's weakness.
Sometimes we don't always, the important stuff isn't always the easiest to hear, right?
I asked a lady one time, I said, well, she asked me about using one of our stud dogs. And I said, well, let me ask you a question. What 3 things you would like to improve on your bitch? And this was somebody who'd been showing for long enough that she should have been able to answer that question. And she just stared at me. And finally I said, "Nothing?" She said, "No, I don't think there's anything I would change about her." I said, "Nirvana. You've hit the jackpot. You've bred the perfect dog. I can't help you."
Right.
And I don't think she really understood my point was There are no perfect dogs.
Mhm. Definitely.
But
Always striving for better.
yeah, yeah. And it doesn't mean your dog's an awful dog. The dog with the fewest, uh, the most strengths ought to be successful, but no perfect ones.
Yeah, right. Yeah. Otherwise the game would be over, right?
Yeah, yeah. Then no sense breeding her. She can't do any better.
Right. Yes. Yes.
And then she said her final thing was, "Well, I really want Wheatons," and I said, "I can't help you. I don't have any that have demonstrated that they carry the Wheaton genes or that they have a probability of carrying Wheaton genes."
Mhm. Always has to throw one other curveball in there, right?
Yeah, to me, I remember I had a little bitch. What was her name? Little brindle bitch,
Mhm.
Miss Parker. And somebody said to me, "Oh, you have a brindle pup." And I said, "Yeah." "Well, I thought you hated brindle. Why did you think that?" "Well," I said, "when I get a good one, I keep it." This is a good one.
Yeah.
But color, when people start, and I think this is a particular issue sometimes with Wheatons, because there are people that fall in love with that color, and then they will keep the best Wheaton
Mhm.
instead of the best puppy
Right.
in a litter.
Mhm.
And and it's why sometimes over decades Wheatons will go up in quality and then they'll drop down in quality and then up again and then down again. It just shouldn't matter what color they are.
Mhm. Right. Right. Definitely. It should be that icing on the cake.
Yeah, yeah. And you can, if you want a pretty Wheaton, you need to start looking for a stud dog that's Wheaton or a good one that carries the Wheaton genes. Not just, oh, this dog's Wheaton and he's a champion.
Right. Right. Definitely. So, two final questions.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Many have said lately that our numbers are low, right? Which we talked about a little bit here.
Yeah.
Which brings us to another, question. Where are we at with stud dogs and the availability of stud dogs, right? You have often talked about they don't have to be a champion, right? We need to start really looking to expand our breeding population and the availability of stud dogs, right?
Yeah. Yeah. It's there's a couple of things that play into this. One is health issues.
Mm-hmm.
Um, as our numbers decrease,
Mm-hmm.
we will see more dogs with Scotty cramp.
Mm-hmm.
And that's because
Mm-hmm.
for when I first got into dogs, nobody ever produced Scotty cramp. Nobody.
Mm-hmm.
And people just quietly got rid of them. Some people, um, people that are out of it now, but they lived about 30 miles from us. And
Mm-hmm.
Buffy was over there one day and they were talking about this dog they really liked a lot. And in about an hour, Buffy saw him cramp and she said, "Oh, he's got cramp." "No, he doesn't. That he had a parvo shot recently, and that's what's causing this."
Hmm.
Buffy came home and said, "Miss Cramp." And eventually the dog just disappeared. But people just didn't talk about it. And then over time, it got better. Um, but I posted a video of a dog with cramp because so many people say, "Oh, I've never had it." Well, how many litters have you had?
Mm-hmm.
And if you don't know what you're looking for, it's easy to miss in a
Right.
puppy, particularly.
Mm-hmm.
So I posted a video so people could see, and dog was not, severely affected, but you could see him
Yes.
arching his back and lifting
Mhm.
his leg up. And the owner of the stud dog called me and was just outraged. And I said, I didn't say who the sire was. I didn't even name the bitch. I said, it's a bitch of ours.
Mhm.
I said, that's your job to tell people if
Mhm.
you have any, known genetic issues with the dog. And I don't tell people never breed a dog that has produced cramp.
Mhm.
25% of his puppies will be clear, and
Mhm.
50% of them will be carriers.
Right.
And sometimes, when numbers are low,
Mhm.
you can't just let them go.
Right.
But you can't also not tell the people who own the bitch.
No. 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 Mm-mm.
So his last words to me were, you'll be hearing from my lawyer. And I thought, yeah, right, because they're going to sue me because I didn't say who the sire was, and
Right.
I wouldn't. And it's not my job.
Mhm.
But it is important that we start being more open about these things. It like to kill me. Sadie's father was a carrier of CA. Now,
Mhm.
he never produced it here, but I bred him to a bitch who I knew had some risk through her pedigree,
Mhm.
and she had it.
Wow.
And I'll tell you, taking him out of the gene pool like to kill me. But
Mhm.
that's different. It's not like cramp in the sense that it gets worse.
Right.
So, dogs with cramp, I place that puppy in a pet home and the people are thrilled with him.
Mhm.
Um,
Yeah.
so that's one thing,
Mhm.
stud dogs, that you have to think about. And we have, um, now that we have CA, I don't think it's as widespread, but it's like all recessive disorders. It's going to become more widespread as our numbers shrink.
Right.
Um, but with Scotty cramp, at least now, we are working on a test
Mhm.
and we will be able to eliminate that. And that's going to be wonderful because recessives are easy to work with.
Right.
Other disorders, epilepsy comes to mind. That's going to be harder. But right now, um, you have to, you used to be able to say, if I want really good rears, sand gray dogs always had these great big wide rears.
Mhm.
You could go to sand gray and get great
Mhm.
rears. You could come to us for other features, and and then you could choose from the dogs in that kennel. You
Right.
can't really do that anymore. I mean, uh, even our dogs are more outcrossed than they used to be. Not
Mhm.
not a lot, but more than they were.
Right.
And so you have to try to go for whatever important thing you want to keep,
Mhm. Mhm.
and hopefully,
Your bitch needs. Yeah.
yeah, get something that the bitch can use. Um, Having numbers of dogs helps. Uh,
Mhm.
Buffy and I used to keep a lot more dogs than I have now. I'm just, 77 and a half. And I just can't manage that, do right by that many dogs. So what I've started doing, I have 3 stud dogs that are in family homes here in Kalamazoo. And the only thing they can't do is neuter them
Right. Yeah.
and let them gain too much weight. Then
It's a great option. Mhm.
yeah, I think that has worked very well. Now, I sold a bitch I probably could have finished,
Mhm.
but to a lady who was interested, thought she might be interested in breeding. And God love her. She has been perfect. She has sent me weights every day. When she had a question, she'd send me a text in the morning. Can I call you? Yes. She'd call, answer the question, do this. She started to have a swimmer. I took her a trough to walk the puppy in and got right up. So she had a good experience. She lost one puppy with the birth, and she's going to try it again.
Look at that.
And I will help her evaluate the puppies. And, you know, I don't know if she'll ever show or not, but she'll breed.
Yeah,
That's a step in the right direction.
definitely.
So we've got to kind of work with people that we've called ugly names in the past. And some of them are always going to treat us badly because some of them are just jerks. But some of them are going to remember the unkind things we said about them. And it's important to remember that they're not all in it for the money. I mean, honestly, stud dog money was great here when we had a lot of stud dogs, and you know, we weren't rich, so it helped. And it is important that some income happen.
Right, definitely helps pay for that $90 dog food, right? Yes.
I nearly swallowed my tongue. $400. And I don't want to take them off it. They like it. They eat it. I don't have to throw away any dog food. But
I know.
We don't want to just be the Scotties to be the playthings of, you know, wealthy people. It's not that I have wealthy friends, and gosh, what would Sadie have been without the Mussers, you know? I mean, I could never have done what Gabriel did with her, that's for sure.
Definitely.
So,
many people have said that as far as any dog, not just Sadie. Gabriel is a craftsman.
Yeah, he is. And he's really good with Scotties. You know, I mean, I learned a lot of things from Peter Green, but Peter was impatient with Scotties. He didn't, you know.
There are handlers that are synonymous with each, you know, different ones, right? Like RC and Welshes or Wires.
Yeah, yeah.